We're recording.
All right, today is Tuesday, September 17th. Voorheesville Board of Education Facilities meeting. Welcome. I did not have an agenda in front of me, Frank, so
Yep.
if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. I have the, I'm about to put it up here, but the first thing on the agenda for today is the PTA Spirit Walk. So we've been talking about this. We talked about the board meeting and we said that we would invite the PTA into the facilities meeting to talk about the Spirit Rock and kind of go over the idea of it now that we have a couple of people on facilities. So Jen Duffy and Victoria Vessel are here to kind of go over it and talk about what it is and then have a conversation moving forward. So that's about it on that one, and I'll leave it to them.
Go ahead. So I proposed an idea to Jen about a spirit rock. Can be at the elementary school, the high school, the middle school. You can have 3 or just 1. All depends on what we want to do. It's basically to promote like school engagement, student engagement for the community, the students. You can basically families would paint the rock to celebrate birthdays. It could be for open house. It could be for sporting events, kindergarten graduation, seniors graduating.
There's a picture of one.
Yeah, it can be big. It can be a small rock. It just all depends on what everybody's willing to do. And it would be, the families would pay to rent the rock. So typically in my research, it's usually like $10 for parents to reserve a spot to paint the rock with a saying. Now the saying I think should be monitored, have like a reservation form. They have to submit to tell us what they're going to paint on the rock. Now I think we should just say like happy birthday, like nothing crazy. Like I think our guidelines should be very specific. So it could be every single day. We could do it on just days that we think it should be open. We could block days for certain events that the PTA might want to paint or have other people paint to support, like maybe like I would say like for teacher appreciation. Maybe the PTA would want to paint the rock then, or somebody else would want to paint the rock. But obviously we wouldn't charge the PTA to do that. But so it's basically just to show kind of recognition for students, staff, the organizations that go on within the school.
So what we did have a conversation a while back at facilities, and some of the things we talked about was who buys the rock, who owns the rock, who monitors the rock, the equity behind the rock, what happens to the rock when you don't use the rock anymore. I believe there was a concern about the type of paint that was going to be used on the rock, right? Am I missing anything? Jim, I know, is concerned about liability.
Liability, controlling the money, who gets what,
Right.
And what
Right.
if we have to clean off the rock, where those expenses come from, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Another concern that came up, and then I'll let you, but I just want to kind of go over some of the things that were brought up before. Another one that came up was, does it violate any policy on advertisements or anything like that? So again, what you're talking about, the guidelines or specifics, is there anything there that we'd have to be concerned with, during that time frame? And then equity issues as well. Can every kid get it or not get it? And, how's that time frame work? So those were some of the things that came up that we didn't have answers for as questions. And I know that was part of the conversation. And really, it's if the board wants to move forward and having something like this on property and then developing the criteria moving forward. So Kathy, sorry, I just wanted to clarify some of what was discussed.
So a lot of times kids share, there's more than one kid with a birthday in school.
So
on
you
the
could
same day. So you could partition the rock.
Yes,
and
you could
everybody
do like
gets-
paint the front of the rock or the back of the rock. I've seen that happen too. Or you could have one like, say in the elementary school, one down by like maybe like the bridge and then one up someplace else. You could do 2. Probably more cost effective just to do one and then paint one side and the other side. There is guidelines for the paint. There's certain paint that you need to use. Definitely know like sticky things on there or anything like that, but it's like acrylic paint. You can do spray paint, but some people were kind of against the
I
spray
think you'd
paint.
probably say no to spray paint.
Spray paint dried the fastest and stayed the
Yeah.
best from a color
Mhm.
perspective.
Yeah.
So in our guidelines, we would ask people to bring a drop cloth or some cardboard to cover the ground. And then they do a fresh coat of undercoat so that everything pops. And then the colors go up as they need to for the message.
Right.
But spray paint was actually the one that did stick the best
Mhm.
and is best for drying times, even in the winter.
How often is it getting painted? And then from like a pure facilities access perspective, like when, I guess.
Mhm.
So we can rent the rock technically through our webpage, and someone reserves the space and can pay for the space. And you can rent it from 4 p.m. the day before, and then it's effective to 4 p.m. the next day, so that when the child
So-
comes to school, they see them.
So it could be getting painted daily.
Yes, it could be
potentially,
daily,
As
yes.
opposed to weekly or,
I
okay.
think you
Correct.
put some of that criteria in. I did put that in the agenda
Yeah.
too, so when you have the agenda, you can see some of the criteria.
So you rent it basically from 4 p.m. to 4 p.m. the next day, and then you have a window that you say is acceptable for people to come onto campus and paint the rocks. So say 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. in daylight hours, and we can pull it back a little in winter hours so that we know that people are here when it's still daylight. So it would be painted daily and then covered daily as well. As far as monitoring the sayings
What do you mean
and
by covered daily?
the next person would come and
Okay.
clean it up and repaint
Yeah.
something
You can just
the
paint
next
over
day.
it. You can just paint over it. Yeah, they like,
Oh, so even if nobody rents it the next day, we would go,
No,
No.
no one rents
Oh.
it, it would
It
stay
should
for
stay
the
with
day,
it.
but,
Yeah.
and then the next
But it has
person
to
who
get
rents it.
covered
A primer
a
is,
primer
is-
before,
and that's not our responsibility. It would be the
Yes.
person running the rock.
okay.
Their responsibility to prime it, paint it, do all
Mhm.
it's their expense with all the supplies.
yeah, so there's a base coat that you could just, a base coat spray paint, so.
Jim had,
And how,
Go ahead.
how do you deal with like, if this is successful, which I think it would be, the buildup of paint on the rock? Like I'm right now scraping lots of layers of paint at my house.
So
it became a very big rock.
Right.
All different.
we can clean it with a pressure washer once in a while. Depending on if we want to do that or not. But I think schools don't do that all the time and
Yeah,
it
it
just
just gets
it
bigger.
gets bigger and
so,
bigger.
okay.
Yeah.
Jim, you
Like a
said,
job.
I
maker.
just have a little concern potentially about gift of public funds when it's who owns it and if money is being made off of it. Is that something, because it's on our property, that would violate that?
Okay.
That's one concern.
who would own it? Like, so,
Right.
that's a good question. Who would buy the rock? Or donate the rock? And would we, I mean, it's on our property, so would we technically own it? And then, like, I don't understand how that would work at all.
We already though have events where the PTA runs where money changes hands for concessions or pay to get like when they used to do movie nights, I've done it a bit, or other things like that. I would imagine it's
But
the
that's a
same.
use of facilities,
Right.
not, I think.
It's a one-off use of
So
facilities
that's,
as
yeah,
opposed to.
I don't know. I'm just brainstorming with Jim right now, like. just
I
thinking
mean,
about
do
it.
you do something like, we've had to do Scotland soccer, or do a 12-month,
Right.
use of, like, do you
As long
do you
as we
do a
don't buy
facilities
them,
use for
Right?
the rock to the
Well, if we
PTA?
buy the rock, then it becomes the district
Correct.
purchases it, so then it would be a gift
Potential.
of, a potential gift of public.
If somebody
funds.
else bought the rock, they would have to donate the rock though.
Right, but
Right.
then you could do an agreement stating, I think there's ways around it, I agree with you, like, we would just have to be clear, like, say Jerry Parman, right? Because,
Yep.
sorry, Jerry, it's like recording.
Any landscaping company that would like.
Any
to donate.
landscape, right? But, like, people who get donated, like, they could donate a boulder, right? To the PTA, and then the PTA could set up that with us, that agreement saying this is what we would do. I think that would probably be the way to do it.
Yes.
So it would be a donate to PTA then would work with the district if this is what the board wanted to do, to be able to set the criteria, then board approval on the creation of the spirit rock. I think that takes care of all the legal component. I'm not a lawyer, but to me, that sounds about right.
Maybe this is something I should know or ask for. Did the parent teacher organizations have any sort of special standing in state education law? No.
No.
Did we find any big fancy rocks when we
There
were
were
digging
no
around out there?
We did look. We did look. There were no rocks. They were like this big.
Ah.
The biggest ones.
Made digging a whole lot easier, so.
Yeah.
We didn't find any big rocks.
What's your thought as in the facilities perspective?
Location would be one issue. It's like how forward facing it would be. Again, approval of what goes on it would be pretty big. When to do it, because so we have homecoming coming up, somebody buys it that weekend, or would that be one of those blocked out weekends type deal?
I'm leaning more towards not blocking anything out and letting people just kind of freely access it 365 days, besides maybe the graduation day itself or something significant that the district and the PTA would want to reserve. But if we blocked a particular day and that happens to be someone's birthday, they're working around those blocks. So I would rather give access to the community first and then go in for any of the open slots if we could.
It can be rented for other things though, besides
can.
the birthday, right? If it's-
Absolutely. And so we wanted to tie into the district's code of conduct as well, as far as language and what you're putting up there. It's not something that we're looking to monitor on a daily basis. I don't think anyone has that kind of time to monitor 2 rocks. But something to tie into the code of conduct so that everyone understands when they're signing up and registering for it, they're acknowledging they've read that.
I think you would be very clear. You would write no vulgarity, no this, no this. I could not even say that, like, I would put it all in there.
Absolutely.
One of the concerns I have is, just because I worked in schools long enough to know teenagers do
Mhm,
silly
yes.
things, vandalism,
Yes.
would be a concern that I would just have, just because we've had vandalism on our playground. We've had, silly little things happen where they push over the porta potty at night and, you're dealing with that. Like, I could just see that being an issue. So
Okay.
just in your criteria, I would have like an agreement of vandalism. If it does occur, police would be called, and then, whoever had that happen to them probably would get an extra day. I would just think about that, just because if I paid for it, it happened, I'd be pretty upset.
Along the same lines of the code of conduct with the content, I think you alluded to this before, you can't have advertisements, right? So you couldn't rent out the rock and put the Coca-Cola logo on it, or you couldn't,
The Blackbird Cafe.
or the Blackbird, right? You
Exactly,
couldn't,
yeah.
local businesses as we just have it be, just be able to support that, we can't advertise.
Right.
You can't allow.
I think that's what we
advertising on
have to
school
be careful of, is just look at our policy, but
Or can we? I don't know.
Generally, so
I guess
This
ads
is a
go,
good-
ads go in the programs for the play, don't they?
they do.
ever since Coca-Cola came out and basically tried to buy pouring rights everywhere, by giving you a scoreboard or something, and whatever, there have been limitations put in place for any commercial activity. It certainly is not allowed on a bus or on the school building itself, and so as an extension, that might include the rock. So
Could they do like Go Blackbirds for homecoming sponsored by students on the bottom? Like, not like, free, 2-for-1 hot dogs come to Stewart's, like,
that's
I think
that's
that
a
might
more
be,
intricate legal question that
Right,
I'd even want. to
yeah,
go
we would
into.
probably have to, but I could see that being maybe more permissible than, gas is $1.99, right? Something like that. You never know.
But you do want it as an advertising opportunity for community groups. So the school plays are coming up,
Right.
or the big games are coming up, and the booster clubs want to use them. I think it would be a nice community activity.
How do you prioritize like booster clubs over birthdays?
It's a first
It's
come,
first come,
first
first
serve, click on the button.
Yeah.
So in schools, and I think you would just have to clarify this when you know with legal, freedom of speech is really important, right? Is important. So if you allow for one group, and even if you don't politically agree with the other group, like, we still would have to allow that unless our policy states otherwise. So I think it's just very clear, like, you could have the Tractor Pull of America has a thing where, maybe a group that you're not always really fond of, they might want to do something. The criteria is going to have to be pretty clear about what's going to be allowed or not allowed.
I was referring to the
Yeah.
school communities, so the Blackbird clubs, the
Yeah,
team.
well, I'm just thinking,
Boosters.
I'm thinking of all the Supreme
Okay.
Court law that I've seen, and you'd be surprised what's out there. Like, I would just definitely, if this is something the board would want to do, I definitely want our attorney to help
Okay.
work with us, because I don't know if you guys have an attorney as the PTA,
We do not.
but we would definitely want to have just like some of those very specifics looked at. So we're not potentially having an issue down the road that we didn't foresee.
Mhm.
Cause I'm just thinking some of those case laws. Thoughts of next thoughts for PTA?
Did we, I don't remember, because it was a while ago when we first talked about this, and we said we were gonna talk about it with a full board. We kind of did in the context of a facilities report, but maybe next step, talk about it as a full board.
Right. My question is gonna be is where would you want the rocks? Because nothing's going at the elementary school for at least, 12 months. So that, so this is gonna be, if it's an elementary
Anywhere
school, we
though,
have 12 months to do it. There is no room down there.
How big of a rock are these rocks?
It all depends.
Yeah, it depends on what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Like, could you put a
Half the
rock
table.
next to the bike racks on
That bike
the?
rope's getting ripped up and they're putting a new sidewalk in that area.
Oh, that's right, we're putting, yeah.
That-
It really is
I'd prefer it
everywhere.
As close to a camera as possible for vandalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aspect
that's
of
what
it.
I was thinking.
Yeah.
And, I think the playground gets unofficially used sometimes as like a birthday spot, just so you all know.
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm
Yep,
just saying, I probably have heard of that before, where
Uh-huh.
people go to the playground and have a birthday
for
party.
sure.
Having a rock out back where the kids can see it.
Yeah.
But there literally is not gonna be any green space that
Yeah.
won't be touched on there during this project.
Is it something that we could put out though and then have moved for the project time for the summer months that the area won't be allowed, or I can block off those calendar months
So
for the
then
elementary only?
those responsibilities to move it, where is it gonna be stored?
If we can find a wonderful Voorheesville landscaper, is that an option?
I would not want to store it on property. Like, I think that would be, because we're already dealing with storage issues with everything else down there. Again, depending on where we go with the board and where we stand, I'm sure there's always options that we could try to figure out. Even if it's just one rock for the beginning of the year. You would do it in the winter, or you would do it.
Yeah, you have,
And the most visible space is the front of the elementary school to drive by for the
Mhm.
happy birthday message when the bus is coming through, because not everyone does go out.
I'm
that
not sure if I love the idea of having that as your mark of your school district, and like, you have that kind of thing, and again, that's board decision, when you look at a school district, you want to have what that school district message stands for, and if that's, something you want to have, there's happy birthday, Johnny, as, that's the person you see. I don't know if that is the appropriate place for it in the front of the building in comparison to maybe the back where more of the kids are, the playground and other aspects. Is it for the public facing or is it for the students? So then I think that would be the question I would have is where would you have that students, they're gonna see it in the playground. It could be a place where kids play too, right? Kids playing boulders.
Now you've just brought up another liability.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, it's then it's not our rock.
Like
Where we-
somebody gets hurt,
Yeah.
spray painting it, or, is it gonna be a massive disruption if they're there during a school day
Right.
and the whole family is outside spray painting? It's a really nice idea. I'm just thinking of all the worst case scenarios,
Yeah.
truly. Yes.
Is there anybody around
Gotcha,
here who's done?
Yeah, that's what we've been kind of living on this one. It's nice, but
One of the Shaker elementary schools has them, but they're more popular down south when it's a big
Yeah, the
homecoming.
weather.
Yep.
what elementary school in Shaker has it?
I don't know. I was just told by another parent that Shaker does. I can reach out to the principal if you'd like.
Yeah, would you mind? Because in
It would help answer some of those
it
questions.
really would, like, if a nerd is a school
Yeah.
already doing it.
Yeah.
Like, where do they have it? Where,
Yeah.
what's the criteria of it? That'd be great.
How's it working?
Yeah.
And how would people sign up for it?
We have a school store website, so you would click a slot and make your
Okay.
credit card payment on the website.
I guess I'm just anticipating, especially like around homecoming, a lot of people are gonna wanna do it. And if we only have, one or two rocks, how would it make sure it's first come, first served?
Are we thinking secondary campus as well?
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
But we were
Elementary.
hoping for 2 rocks if
Mhm.
possible.
What were you thinking for the middle school, high school campus area?
But we didn't have a location in mind. We wanted to leave that up to you.
Tricia mentioned it, like, her school district. Remember that during the meeting? She was talking about how they did it.
Frank? Speaking of liability.
I'll be right back.
Oh, boy.
Worst case scenario.
Oh,
Thought I saw something move out of the corner of my eye.
oh, huh.
So yes, kids will climb on the rock.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
There she goes.
Oh, yeah.
Even in a highly visible area.
Oh. Play practice, getting this up. And then what's going on over the parking lot's full? So I just dropped
Soccer,
my daughter off.
soccer game
Soccer
Yeah, girls' house, too.
and volleyball
Yeah.
and volleyball.
and cross country down to Swift.
School year has begun.
Yeah.
Yeah. My days right now, yeah. Layla, cheer. Ella, cheer. Emma, swim. And it's a good happy spot. Tonight would have been happy soccer, I think. Yeah.
Nice soccer tonight, too.
Yeah. All-
So next step is conversation
With
for
the full
board,
board, right?
Yeah,
put it on the next agenda.
yeah, we can talk through all those things. And if we happen to have info from another shaker ahead of time.
Yeah, that, if we
that'd be
can
awesome.
get that, that would be
We have,
great.
we have a few
Yeah.
weeks, so.
I'll reach out, and you can give them my name and email, and they can reach out to me.
If not, I will contact one of the schools down south that my family goes to.
Well, if not, I'll call
Yeah.
the superintendent too.
Okay.
And if not, if you don't hear back from the principal, I'll call the super and we'll
Right.
just go that route.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yep.
That's it for PTA. You're all
Thank you
good?
very much.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for coming.
And that wasn't that bad, was it? Jim?
Have a nice night.
You
Yeah,
too.
you too.
All right, updates from facilities director, superintendent around projects. So I'll go first. The Department of Health has approved our temporary cafeteria.
Good.
Awesome.
So that's a huge move forward for the project. So that is moving. Our energy performance contract is still at state ed. It's, I'm being told, hopefully by the end of the week. So, as if you don't know, the energy performance contract deals with both buildings, secondary and elementary. So there's some scheduling components of that. Also some very long lead items that you need to get. There's one item that's roughly 12 months right now.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the central, that's the.
What's
it there? Just there for the-
Oh, yeah. What's the next step after state that approval?
That's it.
No bids. We have to,
No
because
bids.
it was already.
No, so there's already, so we have an owner architect meeting, so they consider me the owner, architect, and our construction manager meets bi-weekly. So we've invited Danforth, which is the EPC provider, to that next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, just to basically do, I'm anticipating it will be done. So then we work on schedule and all the next steps are there. So,
Where does
Oh.
that desert air system come from?
you know where they're getting it from?
I just wondered if it's-
The actual company that makes it.
Yeah, I just wondered why it takes so long.
I don't know.
Oh, it's just, it's a huge unit. with all-
Right.
So it's just,
It
takes that long and they don't have any quote unquote on the shelf.
Sometimes
so.
it takes 2 months to get a blind.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable nowadays, like the back order and just very simple things. They take longer.
Could we, at the next board meeting, maybe, because we have 2 new board members, and it's also been a while for the rest of us, just maybe go through the EPC with what was in it and what we're doing, just a quick
Yeah.
update and overview. I remember when we were putting that out for approval, we did like a whole, I think we did a walkthrough with the whole board.
We did.
like, looking at,
everything, yeah.
looking at what we were gonna do, and it was, and there's a lot in it. And
There's a lot
I
of
don't even remember
weather,
off the top of my
yeah,
head
there's a
all
lot
the
of
stuff.
weather guarding.
Yeah,
There's
but-
weather guarding, weather supports to be energy efficiency aspects in the building. There's temperature controls,
lots of lights, right?
lights,
Everything's
everywhere.
LED.
Everywhere in the district's getting LEDs, retrofit throughout the high school, secondary. I say secondary when I mean middle school, high school campus. The pool is getting LEDs, and that's been an area of concern for a very long time.
Yeah.
It's also a safety concern because it's really hard to change a light bulb in that pool area. But then also the elementary school's getting all new lighting down there and everything. So and a lot of the LED, that goes along with the construction project, so we really need to time it.
Yeah.
Cameras at the secondary campus, yeah, but we can absolutely talk about that. Our transportation facility is all right. There's a couple little setbacks, but you know, that's the way projects go. But overall, everything seems to be working pretty well. They put the caps on the wall now and they drilled the fences. So
One of those fences gonna be in.
They're working with their subcontractor now, so Sienna Fence is doing that install and it's gonna be soon.
Like weeks as opposed to months.
Yes, next few weeks here, yes.
Awesome.
and then the retaining tank for water. So let me explain this really quick. We've gotten a tank that it's graded to be able to hold fuel. And that tank will hold the water from the inside of the building, so like from where the garage is, and also will hold the wash bay water.
So any water that's possibly contaminated
Runoff.
with oil
Yeah,
and
I mean,
grease and
yeah.
everything, not just runoff, so it's not like rainwater.
Yeah, but like,
So washing the bus, you're washing off the diesel fuel and the oil, we're not
Like
dumping
gray
it
water,
back in.
kind of,
Yes.
like, yeah.
So we spec'd out it's a double lined one, so that really is not, it's a gray area because really for outside area and wash area, you don't need a double line tank.
Mhm.
But the fact that there's gonna be like possible fuel or oil in it, we have that as a safeguard, and that's DEC recommended. So that tank is a little behind schedule. And unfortunately may not be in before frost happens because it has to go down 12 feet. So we're trying to figure out location and setting and how we can do that. It's not impacting our schedule. It's just one of those little things that,
okay.
it's, you want to get the tank, you want to do the right thing, but the tank is.
How do we deal with the removal of the pump? It just gets pumped out
Yeah.
every,
Like a
Every
septic
year.
system.
Something
pretty
like
much.
that.
yeah.
They probably expect it to be large enough for
Yeah.
an annual.
And we have to pump them out. You really should be pumping them out anyways, because the fact that you have diesel fuel or oil and everything else, you want to be able to safeguard. So everything we're doing is very environmental friendly, but when it's environmentally friendly, sometimes the stuff is also on back order. So it's difficult, but they were able to find one through our construction manager and, go through that. So positive stuff. Really, that's where we are with the big project itself. Our camera system in the high school is done. So that is finished. We just need training on it. So we have all state-of-the-art cameras now, which is great. Our phone system is in. I believe we're still fixing a few little bugs here or there, but other than that, we are completely upgraded. We also just signed the licenses and, for recording, so we have recording capability as well with the safety concerns you want to have. What happens with the recording, it's kind of cool, just so people understand how it works. Let's say, Robin, you and I are talking and 5 minutes into it, I realize, you know what? This sets the protocols of why I need to have a record this phone call. I hit the button, it automatically records. Since it's digital, it goes back to the beginning of the conversation. So they bank it and it gets the whole recording. So it's not just recording the part, it gets everything. But that is a license agreement that goes along with it. It's an add-on, but it's definitely important to have.
Neat.
So their phone system is integrated and working on. The next step will be to integrate our alarm systems in our bell system and speaker systems, all with the phones, because that can happen. So we can do that as well, but that's down the road after we get the bugs worked out on this. Step in moving forward. Neil?
100K project for this year?
Yep.
So a couple years ago, we tried to gain roof access to on top of the pack. But because of the location and a couple issues, it wasn't able to happen. So for this year's project, we proposed doing a exterior ladder on the side of the pack, which will bring us up 2 layers. One is about a 7-foot up and over onto another axis, and then 18 feet to gain access on top of the pack to access the equipment up there and a few roof leaks that could be popping up.
So you got a quote.
So we got a quote from Weatherproofing Technology. We're within the 100K aspect.
Basically, you want to stay within 80,000 when you're doing a $100,000 project because of the soft costs. This one's 67, so it's within.
So this would be a safe way, because now if we have to get up there, it takes 3 people and a couple extension ladders. So it's not the safest way to do it. And on top of that, roof is going on 22 years old. So there's some maintenance that needs to be done up there. If we can do it on a more regular basis, it would be better.
Thoughts?
Sounds good to me.
It is one of the consortia that we work with, that is led by a governmental agency, so we can just go directly with them. Don't worry about vetting or anything. It'd just be an approval by the board of the, quote.
So that could be on the board agenda.
Right? Yeah, we'll get the resolution going.
Well, first we have to put it through state ed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a little process before we meet the resolutions and everything. Start the process.
this one should be fairly straightforward, but state ed takes quite a while.
All right. Any other questions on that or any updates to our current facilities? All right, field conditions. So Neil, go ahead.
A couple concerns have been brought to us by a few of our teams about the conditions of the field overall. There are still a good amount of weeds out there. There's still somewhat uneven, which aerating and overseeding and top dressing is a long-term process. But in order to try to level the playing field and get back to square one, the coaches have asked about the use of pesticides on the field to clean them up, overseed better, and start with a fresh slate. Get them as tough as possible.
So we had a person come to the board meeting, I told Neil as well, who's a community member. They also say that there's holes in the field. Neil, have you seen holes in the field or?
There's definitely some divots, high wear areas like goal mouse. Areas that definitely need attention.
And one of the issues that comes up with it, even besides the weeding and everything else, is the use of the fields. We now are using our field basically all the time.
Mhm.
So in the past it was soccer, now it's soccer and lacrosse. So, I mean, even if you look at the Kiwanis fields or like at the elementary school, there's giant mud holes in it now because they're just overly used. And Neil had a thought process on that may or may not people enjoy, but do you want to talk about that schedule?
So currently our fields are basically used from April 1 or whenever the ground breaks till November 1 or whenever it freezes up again. I propose at the very least at the satellite field, shutting down one level of field from July 1 to the time spring sport or fall sports start.
Mhm.
So we have that 6 weeks to beef it up and make it as tough as possible and on a rotating schedule. So shut down one
I know, I just.
for one summer.
I just can imagine how people are gonna react.
And then, so not shutting down the entire satellite field, it's just one field at a
Mhm.
time, get that one strong as possible and healthy as possible. And then close down another field the following summer and kind of work on a cyclic basis.
And are we just talking the satellite fields? Not here.
So this summer, we did our best to keep as much activity over there as possible. So there was limited use on our main fields.
Mhm.
But
So
these are in pretty good shape. It's over there.
these are-
Overall,
these are stronger than over there, yes.
Cause I went over there this afternoon just to walk it myself. And yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, if you're walking, I'm thinking my kids played soccer.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're running, they're not holes, but they're,
Divots.
you know, it's uneven. And
High
then,
wear areas
Right.
just get beat up, worn
Right.
down.
and that far field way in the back
Mhm.
is on quite a slope. I mean, uphill, you know, which is interesting for soccer, but, or whatever they're playing on there, but
The crown on the field is a little greater than it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps to promote water
right,
runoff,
right, Dana.
but that's excessive.
and one of the other things down there that's another issue is water, right? So up here we have a sprinkler system that we water and we utilize.
Mhm.
Over there, yeah, you want to explain the issues over there with water.
Over there, we have field hydrants. So basically it's a little bit more than a garden hose. And in order to water a soccer field, that's not enough. So we have a traveling wheel, you can pull out the gun and it'll spray and it walks itself back in. But the amount of water it puts out isn't enough to keep up when we're having 80 degrees and no rain for 3 weeks or more.
When those satellite fields were built, I mean, they've always been kind of the stepchild of the district, you know, I don't. But it always seemed like they were just not maybe 100% installed well.
I have also heard that.
And you know, even from almost the beginning,
Hmm.
there was complaints about rocks or, you know, pebbles more than
Mhm.
rocks, but, you know, that it's more weeds and just not as well done as the fields here.
And even the fields here are nice, but there's
Overuse
years,
is-
there's
well, yeah,
overuse. I mean, if
overuse,
you look at the
really.
football field, we know, like,
Right.
it'd be great to rip it up and put a new one in, because it's,
Re-level it.
yeah.
So has Joe weighed in on like the one field rotation? I mean, where do we?
He feels good about that, you know, but doing the one field rotation can be helpful, but there's other components we have to look at. We have to look at the watering, you know, and do we budget in for, you know, you getting a bigger line over there and then getting a bigger wheel, because we'd have to run the piping. You know, so those are components to help with it. And then I do think, you know, Neil did bring up the fact that the pesticide component of it. So I want to kind of talk about pesticides and the use of pesticides so you understand. Does everybody understand the law behind pesticides? I have, I grabbed, thanks, where was that? You're the best. You are the best. So a couple of things about pesticides. When the person said, who came to the board and they said, well, it's a board decision, they actually are right. The only people who can decide that is a board. And our board policy kind of matches 409H and 409K, which is the regulations of it. And here's basically what it says. Pesticides will not be used on district playgrounds, turf, athletic fields unless there is an emergency. So an emergency, and that's the only time you can use it. And the only people per the law who can denote a policy, an emergency, would be the Board of Education. So that is something that I think is important. So an exception from pesticide prohibition is provided for emergency applications, which made only as determined by entities specified in the law, which is school boards or state agencies like DEC and stuff like that. An herbicide to be able to handle weeds is considered a pesticide per the regulation. So the board would have to say, you know, you'd have to hear other people saying, no, there's a situation and here's why, and then you would have to make a decision. So only the board can pass the fact to it.
But a lot of times with the herbicides, once you apply it, it's quite a while before you can reseed because you're impacting that.
Yeah.
Right?
Depends on the product you use.
Yeah.
A lot of them are targeting just the, yes.
Right.
So it'd be a little bit before you can oversee, and you're not doing it that same week.
Right.
But we would be able to, I would also oversee a few months before, so you can have as strong as possible to take the place of those weeds once they do die out. And then we would oversee again after those 2-3 weeks.
Now, as Neil, I was asking you, like, why would it be considered an emergency? Like what steps would mean that the board would have to consider an emergency? So you answered a couple questions, so why don't you?
Yeah. So with a certain percentage of weed cover out there, and we have different flowering ones like clover and dandelions, so the bees are attracted to them and other stinging insects. You got a kid with an allergy out there playing soccer, they fall down and get stung, go into shock or something. Obviously, that is something you want to avoid. And also, most weeds don't have a very strong root base. So as somebody steps on them, it could possibly give out underneath them. And that's how you break knees and ankles and everything else.
We do have a lot of these.
We do have a lot.
Oh,
Of
yeah.
it. In the spring, we were basically yellow with dandelions.
Is this something where we would expect a lot of community pushback, or we don't know?
So I think you're gonna get 50-50, right? And here's why I think that. The fields are in pretty rough shape over there, right? And even around here, like we know, like we're talking about facilities upgrades and doing those things. So restarting is a good thing, but restarting, you're gonna have to close the fields and you're gonna have to reseed and do those things and get the opportunity for it to grow. There's wetlands over there. Now, you know, that's one of the reasons why we can't expand too far is because there's wetlands and other components. So I think there are people who would have concerns with pesticide use over in that area and the concern of it. I think you're gonna get 50-50. I think you have to look at it from the board's perspective. Is what do you want the end result of that field to look like? And then how do we get to that component? So there's multiple layers. The quicker way we get there is put the herbicide down, get rid of it, reseed, redo those things. Might help it faster. Neil's the professional when it comes to grass. I'm not.
Is there outside impartial, right? Not us or part of the district group that we could bring in to sort of give us advice on that to make sure we maintain impartiality when we make the decision, if people are gonna be upset by the decision.
I didn't see that last time. I thought there, you have some group that you work with, because I asked if you work with Cooperative Extension at all.
They're been-
We had
Well, I have-
athletic field consultants come in years ago and wrote a plan for us. I don't remember who they were. The plan is somewhere in the files.
I have seen that. It's in my file
Yeah.
somewhere. Are you saying bring in some sort of outside consultant to get an idea of and see their suggestion if they would agree with that?
Not a vendor, but like a
But an
consultant.
actual consultant?
Yeah, and
Because obviously
maybe
sales
have
guy would be
them
like, yeah, bypass.
Right,
come
exactly.
present at a full board meeting, because it's a full board decision, and, you know, walk through sort of what you just outlined, right? That, you know, weeds or growth that is not turf on these fields is more than just an unsightly nuisance. It's potentially dangerous for our athletes, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, I don't know, maybe do they look at it and give us a sense of what's there? And this is, you know, I don't know. It just feels like maybe it covers our bases a bit. I don't know what sort of costs would be
But that's what I
incurred.
While you were talking, I looked at it,
Yeah.
I go, do we have funds for that, Jim?
And nothing specific that has been budgeted, no.
Yeah.
So it'd be a matter of how large the expense is.
Could we do that through BOCES Health and Safety through a COSA?
Theoretically, yes, but I'm not sure there is a COSER in
No, I
place
don't
that would
think there
cover it.
Do you know of any, can you check with your counterparts to see if there's anyone out there that could even?
See if there's some sort of consultant that does such things.
Yeah, I mean,
So
there's
if we
nobody.
didn't go with the pesticides, you'd have to bring in some dirt and oversee. Right now,
You
with weed
can
or whatever.
keep weeds. The problem is with the amount of weeds we have now, we're trying to play catch up. So you can keep them at bay through aerating, overseeding. I mean, best way to keep the weeds out is have as strong turf as possible. The problem is we're already over 50% weeds. So trying to get under that is kind of a losing battle at this point. So you do herbicide application, you wipe the site clean, and then you strengthen from there, and you can keep it as clean as possible going forward. But we're already so far behind the 8 ball at this point. It gets tough. So between aerating and overseeding, we could lessen the weeds some, but it's still a long process.
Is there anyone from like the county or the town where there may not be costs incurred to us who could weigh in? I mean, those types of folks maintain athletic fields as well. I don't.
Again, I think we're looking for a professional opinion, so we
Yeah.
can check and see. But again, sometimes people who are maintaining those may not have the degrees or, you know, components that you're looking for to be able to say, yes, use herbicides or not.
And they're not under the same rules as we are, so it may be
Nah.
a slightly skewed perspective.
Good point too. I mean, there are schools that use herbicides and pesticides, and they use them. They put them on their fields. They have a rotational plan. We have neighbors that do it every 3 years, right? Like, you know, so this isn't something that's unheard of.
No.
You know, to be able to upkeep it. It's just unheard of for us. It's just not something that we've done in the past.
It's tough because given the amount of weeds that are over at the satellite field, like have to really kind of go in strong because
Mhm.
at certain times I mean, it gets to the point where it's not safe for people to be
Yeah.
running and, you know, the weeds get tangled up in cleats and things. I spend a lot of time at satellite field, so yeah, it's pretty significant.
But you're also gonna get the bee people, the clover, the whole, you
Well,
know.
he's got a plan for that, Neil.
So the way to,
He actually, we talked about that today, actually. It was really, that was.
so the best way to avoid any damage to your pollinators is mowing it either the morning of if there's time or the day before. So there's none of those flowering heads to attract the bees in. So less anything in the area is ideal. That way you go in, do what you gotta do,
See that being-
as little damage as possible.
We can look and we can have conversations to people, but I think it will come down to the point of how quick of a turnaround do we want on those fields, right? Because
Mhm.
if you're not using herbicides or pesticides, it's pesticide, but it's an herbicide. If you're not using it, then you're doing it the other way, and the other way takes time, right? So it really, I think it comes down to that conversation in the end, is which way do you want to go? And, do we have enough time to wait before someone really does get hurt or goes in a
Yeah.
situation that.
In fact, my question, Joe is okay, like he could schedule a field down or a rotation, like what are our alternatives? Because we're gonna lose the elementary fields too.
Well, correct. For
Right.
us, so as a district, we'll be fine. Right? If during the summer, because we don't really use our fields in the summer, it's community use, right? The community use next summer that's gonna be a major issue because you won't have the elementary school field probably through December, right? Until the springtime.
Mhm.
And then you're not gonna have, then you wouldn't have one of those. So, any of those groups like New Scotland Soccer Club and Kiwanis and whoever else, that's gonna be, but if people want fields,
Oh, yeah, no,
they want it, this is gonna be,
I just think we have to make sure we give lots or as much notice to those groups as possible, so they don't.
hence the conversation in
Yeah.
September.
So I would suggest doing the actual application in the beginning of July. So that way all the spring sports are done and everybody's off the fields. You have to close the fields down for 72 hours before
Mhm.
anybody gets back on there. And that way we have time to reestablish the fields before fall sports
Would
start
you
up
do the
again.
whole field then? Would you close down, if you're doing,
If
say you
we
doing-
were doing pesticides over there on the entire thing, I would suggest closing the entire thing if we could. Simply to reestablish the turf.
How much would it cost to do the water line?
I couldn't even guess.
So my question's gonna be, if that was gonna be the route we go, would we do the $100,000 project? Do we do site work as part of the $100,000 project or no? I can't remember.
Probably not. Technically, you're required to have $10,000 in a building to have anything be.
I don't think we have $10,000 in that bathroom over there.
Yeah, I was just thinking, that's why,
Gotta spiff it up over there.
right, that'd be a one fancy bathroom. That's the only thing I was thinking, is if we could earmark that fund there.
No, but we do have deferred maintenance money in
That's
and we
true.
can continue that.
So we can look at that, okay. Possibility. So we'll look into it, have a conversation, we wouldn't do the herbicide even if it was to that point, probably then until July. Thinking,
If we did it in the springtime, we would have to keep everybody off the field for again those 72 hours. So you do it that Thursday, Friday, close it
what
out for
about
the
the
weekend.
Boston
Lacrosse would not be able to practice on those fields.
or play, right? I mean, we wouldn't have games on.
Like at all or just for the 3 days?
For those 3 days to meet legal requirements.
Yeah.
But what if you're losing, this is where my thought, if you're losing 50% of your greenery, right? Because it's all weeds, can they still play there then?
We can start establishing new turf to grow up through it. So, because everything's commingled, and if you look at our crabgrass, we actually have grass growing through it and it's kind of weaving its way through everything. So you've got one thing of crabgrass that is encroaching on everything around it. So losing that, it would open up. So yes, we would still have some bare spots as stuff starts to die off, but no more than we did last season.
Okay.
Hmm. Okay.
So we'll look into it, get a report back in the next facilities meeting, see where we stand.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Last thing. So, the beauty part of finishing one project or getting one going is then talking about another one. So, we've talked about the secondary campus, and our fields maintenance and all those other things, but really talking about what does that mean and what's our timeline really comes down to financing and when things can be done. So I kind of wanted to have Jim talk a little bit about capital project financing and where we stand and if we are going to do another project. Because this building is in need of a project for multiple reasons. When can we do it? How can we do it? And what's our planning time?
So, as an initial rough estimate with everything that we feel needs to be done, including the fields, replacing the track, et cetera, roofing everywhere, major upgrades to this side because it's 22 years old right now. We're have an initial rough estimate between 25 and 30 million for the project.
I mean, we haven't even spent
No.
out.
That's without a list of things. You're saying that's what we want to spend.
Well,
No,
we're saying,
that's us going through and saying, okay, it costs roughly this much to do this, roughly this much.
We
to do
Does that
this.
include all the athletic field stuff we've been talking
yes.
about? Okay.
So it includes athletic fields, the pack lighting, because that's going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the ceilings. It doesn't include a conversation regarding air conditioning. It doesn't include asbestos abatement. It doesn't include upgrading of the building, you know, of any like outdated items or anything like that. So, you know, we're upgrading the bathrooms. It doesn't include that conversation. So we're estimating there could be other parts that we're doing. So high end estimating, adding in other things of wish list stuff. We're looking 25 to 30 is probably the max of where a project could be. Right? So we're not saying it could be, it would be that. We're saying high end, worst case scenario, what could we kind of afford as a district and what would be like the burden on taxpayers if we were at that amount? That's where we're kind of estimating.
So
It could be less if y'all want it. But.
state aid has a number called the maximum cost allowance. It's based on the number of students you're allowed to have in the building. Current for the secondary campus is in the high $30 million range. So 36 right now is the number. And that's a number that keeps changing as you get to 5 years after a project, essentially. If you put money in, that's off your maximum cost allowance until 5 years later, essentially.
So like elementary school's maximum cost allowance will be nothing. Way down.
We would like to gather about $5 million of reserves for this project, knowing that quite a bit of it is likely to be non-aidable, like the track.
Anything not touching a building, right?
If you wanted to redo this area because you know like the parking and you know the traffic flow isn't really the best, that's all site work. That's not aidable.
It can be as site work if you go all the way down to the base and build it back up, but that's another discussion. So we're kind of, do you want to talk about the potential timing?
Well, let's talk about, so $5 million would be the maximum that we do. We have one capital project fund, or reserve fund already. We would have to establish another one. We're almost maxed out. Right? What do we have left?
Well, we have space in the 2018 one because that was authorized for $10 million.
Right.
We would probably need to go out for another $10 million, 10-year, so a maximum of $1 million per year put in. So right now, after we finish this current project, we have about 750,000 in the capital reserve as it is. We're allowed to put 665,000 into the 2018 reserve. If we have another million, that means we'll be able to put about 3.3 million in over the next 2 cycles. If we have it, I have to make that very clear. So we would be at approximately 4 million if we can max out what we can put in.
Knowing the amount of site work, knowing the capital reserve, knowing all those things, we know that there's still going to be a burden on our taxpayers. Like we can't go, we're not lucky enough to be a district to go out and say, we're going to get 95% back. This is not this. We know it's going to be anywhere between a 2.5 to a 3.5.
So the estimated debt service on the full $30 million, if we go out at that, is roughly $2.25 million per year. Estimated state aid is about 1.6. So the difference of $650,000 is roughly 3% at the current tax levy. When we would be putting it in place, it would be a little under 3%, like 2.95 roughly as a guess. So that's basically the financial background on this.
Ready for the next step? Timeline. So, because you have to, there's a lot of places, and if you know anything about capital projects or how it took to even get to this one, it takes at least 5 years to break ground even before your initial conversation. So, Jim, why don't you kind of talk about where we stand with potential vote for the community?
So what we're thinking is, if we're done with the elementary school project in summer of 2026, it's essentially then time to go out for the next vote. So our initial pie in the sky right now, because we have a lot of work to do, is December 2026 to go out for the vote. That would create a situation, as long as nothing gets really worse at state ed, where the work would start in summer of 2028. So,
And then it will also allow us, the pilots that we're anticipating to go through have already come through. We've
Yep.
already looked at those hits, and looked at how that impacts your tax cap and already gone through, that revenue's already coming into the district. May or may not. May or may not offset some of our costs, depending on where we stand at that point in time. But so we've already kind of lost that window, like waiting that long too. So that's where I think we stand to be able to get a capital project out in that next time frame. If that's where and again, we know that the track is already on its last leg.
I didn't think it was quite gonna get us that far.
It will probably not. We'll probably struggle, but there's no,
Is there?
yeah, when we rush it, if we rush it to 2025, I don't think we'll
The
have
vote, you
enough.
mean?
Yeah, the vote. I don't
Yeah.
think we'll have enough time to really put a strong, comprehensive capital project together. It takes time to really look at what your district needs are, what
So
you
it's
can
15
afford.
months from now, if this is what that would be.
yes. And usually you want to start this 2 to 2.5 years out. So,
It took us a while to finally finalize everything that was going into the bid for and what the community would see for that one project. Initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think we have to do something and we have to,
Mhm.
when you have deferred maintenance and you look at, take the can down the road, it doesn't get better.
Right.
So, I
Mhm.
always think it's like, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say is, I know it takes time, but seeing if we can pull it in a little bit, if it's possible in any way, whether that's, maybe it's a May vote instead of a December vote, or maybe it's, things are always gonna take more time than we think.
I think
So-
it's nice to keep it separate from the budget though.
that would be my.
That is the
concern as
number.
well.
Yeah, it helped us last time.
The
The one before that was with the budget though, right? I think.
the one before me?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember.
'Cause I think sometimes if they're separated, people look at it as two separate, it's all gonna be your taxes.
Yeah, well, this one was big enough that we
Right.
really wanted it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
Totally,
think
totally.
sometimes
Well, this is
then
my
it
concern
becomes,
is-
well, then I'm not
Mhm.
gonna fund the day-to-day if you want this, or
Yeah.
vice versa, I'm not gonna
If
fund that.
if your school district's at your 2% tax cap, and your
Mhm.
2% tax cap is 2.9 that year.
Yep.
And then you're asking for a 3% increase on your tax levy due to like the project. Something's gonna down that.
Right.
And by the way, we're also voting on much more expensive buses. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
We can look at it.
Just that we're going along, I
It's
know.
either 2027 or 2028 is when you're gonna break ground.
Yeah.
Right?
This is 2028 feels. I'm more thinking about the track that, we bought ourselves 5 years, and 5 years is gonna be 2026,
What do you think
2027. Yeah.
on the track? You've seen it, you walk it more than any of us.
I know we can stretch it a little bit, but it'd be nice to have that done in 2028.
It'll be tough, but I think we can get it there.
As opposed to otherwise we're in 2029, or 2030,
No, I know.
I-
We started the conversation for the transportation facility in 2020. During COVID, we started this conversation.
Mhm.
kind of put it into overdrive once I got here with all that. stuff.
Right.
So,
When was our vote?
December
December of 22?
2, yeah,
Is that what it was?
yes.
22?
It basically took 2 years from starting the discussion to get to the vote.
2 years afterwards, so
Mhm.
kids breaking ground.
Mhm.
So we can try, we can see what we can do. I think the first thing we have to look at is, now that we have some basic timeline, kind of everybody agrees that, yeah, we have to do a project, and we at least have an understanding of the scope. And you feel that's an all right scope? We can start putting together some ideas of what it looks like.
Mhm.
I know we talked a little bit about, specifics. We can do the must-haves, the would-be nices, and then the icing on the top, see where we can go from there.
Yeah, I don't think it ever hurts to start being more prepared on our side in terms of that list of what we want, talking to everybody.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a little hard on our end to plan a project while we're in the middle of this one. I gotta be very honest with you.
I know.
It's, it's a lot of work right now, getting to where we need to be. Like we spend,
We have to do another building condition survey, right?
that building condition survey is what, 2 years? Like,
22?
Yeah.
So
21,
22 and
22.
27, so
So
it's
that's-
5 years.
We do every 5.
every
Yeah.
5.
so, that was the other thing. That's every 5 you're supposed to do it.
It's probably 26, I'm gonna say.
We can do our own building assessment survey
Mhm.
based off of those specifics to look at, there's enough that we know that has to get done. It's really then we have to look at our enrollment, understand what our course loads are gonna look like, because you have to look at that as well, right? Not only what would be able to maximize if we have 100 kids in a class, do we need to move the district office, right? Does the district office have to become the middle school? Right?
We need those extra classrooms.
Right.
If you build net new district office space, that is not aidable.
No.
correct? Yeah, needs classroom. Yeah. Can you put a classroom like in a building out by an athletic field? You can, right? I mean, there's you can have it be instructional space. I don't know what they're
Teaching spaces are what measures your building aid units, so yes, theoretically, but.
There's a lot of different, there's some ideas, and I tried to do this once before where you lease, right? You grin and green with somebody where they build, then you lease it off of them and you lease to buy over a period of time because it's a very cheap arrangement to do. So other places, some places have done it. Use grant funding to be able to do some of it, but district offices typically.
I thought we did have I thought you were here, Jim, at the time. I thought we did have a conversation about trying to figure out a way to have improvements out there, like I'm thinking like press box, that type of thing, become aidable.
Yeah,
But-
and it's a matter of that maximum cost allowance and percentage of project. So if you do a certain amount of work within the building, that's all aidable, then you get the soft costs on top
Yeah.
that are aidable. So that would be field work or press boxes or whatever.
We'll go from there. So we'll see if we can take that time schedule down a little bit.
Just, gotta ask.
As you see everybody in this room go more and more involved.
But the borrowing environment and the construction environment might be better than it
Mhm.
was. I don't know. I mean,
Theoretically,
it could be. I'm
right.
not saying, but with some of the economic.
the borrowing environment is still sketchy at this
Is it?
point.
Okay.
I know the Fed is supposed to
Right,
produce, but who knows when and how quickly, so.
The goal will be to do something here as soon as possible. And we'll still continue with our $100,000 offset projects on campuses.
Although with all the work being done at the elementary next year, it may not be smart to put 100,000 down there.
I already have $100,000.
Oh, nice.
I took it, I was just class.
Box, no, class.
My pet peeve, Jim, everybody in the room who works with me on a daily basis knows, I do not like going into an educational space and the clock being wrong and being different in every room.
Oh, they are.
It drives me.
They're not
insane.
synced. They're not like,
No,
They're
so
battery operated.
Yeah.
Oh,
they're just
my
battery,
God.
they're just like,
Yeah.
ooh.
universal clocks across the board. It
Mhm.
drives me insane that as an educational institution, you don't have clocks. that are on.
So I mean, you can even get the battery operated ones now that do the sync with the wireless,
Yes, those are the ones that.
atomic clock
Yeah.
deal.
That's-
God forbid daylight savings time and all those. Yeah.
Mhm.
Might be months before you have the right time.
Mm.
But there's little things like that that we can look at.
Yeah, that's a nice little touch.
All right, anything else?
No, not for me.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.